This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
A very warm welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Chinese ambassador to the United Kingdom Liu Xiangming is holding a virtual press conference on China-UK relations. We're now receiving some live pictures. Let's listen in.
During which they reached the important agreement on advancing China-UK relations and enhancing joint response to COVID-19. The departments of the two countries have been working hard to implement this agreement and carry out cooperation in various fields. This was a positive momentum in China-UK relationship that should be cherished so that further progress could be achieved. To our regret, however, this relationship has recently run into a series of difficulties and faced a grave situation. People are asking, what is happening to China-UK relationship? The British media are also asking, what has caused the current difficulties in China-UK relationship? Has China changed? Or has the UK changed? Today, I'm going to give you my answer to these questions. My answer is loud and clear. China has not changed. It is the UK that has changed. The UK side should take full responsibility for the current difficulties in China-UK relationship. First, China's determination to follow the basic norms governing international relations has not changed. These basic norms include mutual respect for each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equality, and mutual benefit. These are the fundamental principles that are enshrined in the UN Charter. These are the basic norms of international law and state-to-state relations. They are also the basic guidelines that have been written into the joint communique of China and UK on exchange of ambassadors, and hence form the bedrock for China-UK relationship. China has never interfered in the internal affairs of other countries, including the UK. And we ask the same from other countries. Recently, however, the above-mentioned important principles have been violated time and again. On Hong Kong, there have been blunted interference from the UK in Hong Kong affairs, which are internal affairs of China, including groundless accusations against the national security law for Hong Kong SAR, change to the policy involving BNO passport holders, the suspension of extradition treaty with Hong Kong. These moves have seriously interrupted the stability and prosperity in Hong Kong. On Xinjiang, the UK disregarded the facts, confused right and wrong, flaunted slanders recklessly at China's Xinjiang-related policies, and interfered in China's internal affairs by raising the so-called human rights issue in Xinjiang, bilaterally and multilaterally. These actions have seriously poisoned the atmosphere of China-UK relationship. Second, China's commitment to the path of peaceful development has not changed. Pursuing peaceful development is an unwavering strategic choice and solemn pledge of China. China has never invaded other countries or sought expansion. China has never and will not export its system or model. China seeks development because we want a better life for our people. We do not want to threaten, challenge, or replace anyone. History has proved, and will continue to prove, that China is always a defender of world peace, a contributor to global development, an upholder of international law. A stronger China will make the world a more peaceful, stable, and prosperous place. However, some British politicians cling to the Cold War mentality and echo the remarks of anti-China forces in and outside the UK. They play up the so-called China threat, see China as a hostile state, threaten a complete decoupling from China, and even clamor for a new Cold War against China. Third, China's resolve to fulfill its international obligations has not changed. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations. China was the first country to put its signature on the UN Charter. It is now a member of more than 100 intergovernmental international organizations and has signed over 500 multilateral treaties. It has faithfully fulfilled its international responsibilities and obligations. It has never withdrawn from international organizations or treaties, nor does it believe in us first at the expense of others. It is completely wrong to see the national security law for Hong Kong as a violation of Sino-British Joint Declaration or a failure to honor international obligations. The core content of Joint Declaration is about China's resumption of exercise of sovereignty over Hong Kong. The national security law for Hong Kong fully embodies the comprehensive jurisdiction of the central government of China over Hong Kong. The policies regarding Hong Kong laid out in the Joint Declaration was proposed by China on our own initiative. They are not China's commitment to the UK or international obligations. The label of failure to fulfill international obligations should not be stuck on China. It is the UK side that has failed to fulfill its international obligations and went against its own pledges by changing the policy on BNO passport holders and on suspending the extradition treaty with Hong Kong to create public confusion in Hong Kong, disrupt the implementation of national security law, and interfered in China's internal affairs. Fourth, China's willingness to develop partnership with the UK has not changed. During President Xi Jinping's state visit to the UK in 2015, China and the UK issued a joint declaration on building a global comprehensive strategic partnership for the 21st century. China has always seen the UK as a partner. It has been committed to developing a sound and stable relationship with the UK. As the State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi said 2 days ago in his telephone conversation with Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, that for the UK, China is an opportunity rather than a threat, a factor for growth rather than a cause for decline, a solution rather than a challenge or risk. However, there have been major changes and serious deviation in UK's perception and definition of China. This is particularly evidenced by the recent ban on Huawei. The issue of Huawei is not about how the UK sees and deals with a Chinese company. It's about how the UK sees and deals with China. Does it see China as an opportunity or partner, or a threat or rival? Does it see China as a friendly country or a hostile or potentially hostile state? The UK leaders have said on many occasions that they want to build a balanced, positive, and constructive China-UK relationship. We hope they will match their words with actions. The world is undergoing increasingly profound changes unseen in a century. COVID-19 is still ravaging, dealing a heavy blow to economic globalization and resulting in a deep recession of the world economy. What kind of China-UK relationship do we need in face of such situation? China and the UK are both permanent members of UN Security Council and important members of G20 and other international organizations. Both are countries of global influence. Both shoulder the important mission of safeguarding the world peace and promoting development. A sound and stable China-UK relationship is not only in the fundamental interest of the peoples of our two countries, but also conducive to world peace and prosperity. We have 1,000 reasons to make this relationship successful, and not one reason to let it fail. How can we make this relationship successful? I think it's critically important to follow the 3 principles. First, respect each other. History tells us that when the international law and basic norms governing international relations are observed, China-UK relationship will move forward. Otherwise, it will suffer setbacks or even retrogression. China respects UK sovereignty and has never interfered in the UK's internal affairs. It is important that UK will do the same, namely, respect China's sovereignty and stop interfering in Hong Kong affairs, which are China's internal affairs, so as to avoid further damage to China-UK relationship. The second principle is engage in mutually beneficial cooperation. China and the UK have a highly complementary economies and deeply integrated interests. The two countries have both benefited tremendously from cooperation. Such a mutual benefit should not be gauged by an oversimplified comparison of who is more dependent on the other or who has been taken advantage of. It is our hope that the UK would resist the pressure and coercion from a certain country and provide an open, fair, transparent, and non-discriminatory environment for Chinese investment, so as to bring back the confidence of Chinese businesses in the UK. China-UK already shared broad consensus on safeguarding multilateralism, promoting free trade, and addressing global challenges such as climate change. When Brexit is completed and COVID-19 is over, there will be unlimited prospects for China-UK cooperation in areas of trade, financial services, science and technology, education, and healthcare. It is hard to imagine a global Britain that bypasses or excludes China. Decoupling from China means decoupling from opportunities, decoupling from growth, and decoupling from the future. The third principle is to seek common ground despite differences. China and the UK differ in history, culture, social system, and development stage. It is natural. We do not always see eye to eye. 70 years ago, the UK was the first major Western country to recognize New China. Over the past 70 years, China and UK have found common ground despite differences and went beyond ideological differences to achieve continuous progress in our bilateral relationship. Today, after 70 years, this relationship has been more substantial and more profound. It is not a relationship between rivals, where one side's gain is the other side's loss. Still less is a relationship of either or that exists between hostile states. China-UK relationship is one of a partnership which is defined by equal treatment and mutual benefit. China and UK should have enough wisdom and capability to manage and deal with these differences, rather than allowing anti-China forces and Cold War warriors to kidnap China-UK relationship. I often say, Great Britain cannot be great without independent foreign policies. The UK has withstood the pressure from others and made the right strategic choices at many critical historical junctures. From becoming the first major Western country to recognize New China in 1950, to establishing diplomatic relationship with China at the Chargé d'Affaires level in 1954, from taking part in the Asia Infrastructure Development Bank to building a global comprehensive strategic partnership for the 21st century with China. Now China-UK relationship is once again standing at a critical historical juncture. It is my hope that political leaders and visionary people from all sectors in the UK would keep in mind the big picture of the international trend, prevent various interruptions, and make the strategic choice that serves the fundamental interests of the peoples of our two countries. Thank you. Now I'm ready to take your questions.
Hello, now the ambassador is ready to take questions. The first question will go to James Landale from the BBC. Where is James?
Ambassador, good morning. As you say, relations between the United Kingdom and China have deteriorated significantly in recent weeks over Hong Kong, Huawei, Xinjiang. Throughout that process, you and various other government representatives have threatened consequences, countermeasures, even counterattack, to use the language of last week. And yet it's still not entirely clear to me what those countermeasures are. So could you elaborate a little bit more? Is China retaliating in secret, or is its bark worse than its bite?
I want to set the record straight. We made no threats. We threatened nobody, as I said. We just let you know the consequences. You know, people regard some of my remarks as a threatening word. I think they quote my remarks out of context. I said, China want to be friends of UK. China want to be UK's partners. But if you do not want to be our partners and our friends, you want to treat China as a hostile country, you will pay the price. That simply is very clear. That means you will lose the benefits of treating China as opportunities, as a friend. And you will bear the consequences of treating China as a hostile country. So that's very clear. And you're talking about the countermeasures. I think you already seen that after UK announced that they're going to change the policy on BNO, we have made a response by saying we are considering not to recognize the BNO passport holders as a legal travel document. That is because of UK take the measure to departure from their commitment from the MOU in 1984. And at that time, they said they are not going to give a permit or a vote to the BNO holders. And why we also agree to regard the BNO holders, BNO passport as a legal travel document. Now, since they have violated their commitment, and we have to make a response. Again, with regard to extradition treaty, the UK suspended indefinitely. I think it will undermine the basis for legal collaboration between UK and Hong Kong. And China have to make a response to that. And the Hong Kong government, we announced that the Hong Kong government also suspend the extradition treaty with the UK. And they also suspend the legal assistance agreement with the UK because the basis, the foundations of the legal collaboration between the two sides have been undermined. Thank you.
All right, so the Chinese ambassador to the United Kingdom, Liu Xiaoming, holding a virtual press conference talking about the souring relations between China and the United Kingdom and saying that China has not changed. It is the UK that has changed. They said that the UK should take full responsibility for the strained relations between the two countries. They talked about China's respect for the norms that govern international relations. That has not changed, he says, and says that China has never interfered with internal relations of other countries, including the UK. He said it is the UK that has interfered in China's internal issues. He talked about Xinjiang, he talked about Hong Kong, and saying that has led to disrupting the stability in Hong Kong. He also talked about the issue of Huawei, saying that the issue of Huawei is not about how the UK views the company, but how the UK views China. But in the end, he also talked about it is in the interest of both countries to make sure they have a successful relationship. We'll have more details on that in our subsequent bulletins. Now, the Chinese mainland has reported 105 new COVID-19 cases. 102 are local transmissions. 96 of those are in northwest China's Xinjiang region, while 5 are in Liaoning province and 1 in Beijing. Xinjiang now has a total of over 400 cases after an outbreak emerged 2 weeks ago. Most of them are in the capital city of Urumqi. Over 12,000 people are under medical observation there. In Hong Kong, over 100 new coronavirus cases were reported on Wednesday, bringing the city's total to more than 3,000. Zhou Dan reports from Hong Kong.
The Center for Health Protection confirmed that of the 118 cases confirmed, the source of transmission for 46 cases cannot be traced. A prominent infectious disease expert, Zhong Lanshan from the mainland, says Hong Kong should make it mandatory for everyone to test for COVID-19 if the outbreak worsens. But a local expert discounted this, saying this is not practical. Currently, some hospital authority laboratories have been running 24 hours a day. Between the hospital authority and the Department of Health, around 10,000 tests are being conducted each day, pushing their labs to the limit. It's taking longer and longer for them to process all the tests, up to double the usual time because of the manpower. And 2 companies from Chinese mainland are actually helping Hong Kong to do the tests for free, covering 4 kinds of high-risk people. Meanwhile, the central government will help Hong Kong prepare the Asia World Expo Conference Center to serve as a temporary hospital for patients with mild coronavirus infections quite soon, providing all the essential medical support. The convention center will have around 400 to 500 beds and will offer facilities such as x-rays and a pharmacy for patients who are not in need of intensive treatment. Currently, Hong Kong government is strengthening all the measures to try to control the virus.
In the United States, the death toll from COVID-19 has topped 150,000, more than in any other country. The surge has hampered economic recovery and schools reopening. Meanwhile, a Republican lawmaker from Texas has tested positive for COVID-19 after frequently refusing to wear a mask. Many health experts have argued for President Donald Trump to issue orders enforcing social distancing and making mask wearing. Okay, so let's take you back now to that virtual press conference by the Chinese ambassador to the United Kingdom, Liu Xiangming. He is talking about relations between the UK and China. Let's listen in.
CGTN.
Thank you. Good morning, Ambassador. So you just mentioned that China might stop recognising BNO passports as valid travel documents. What would that mean in practice for Hong Kong residents who want to travel to the UK? Also, how do you see a path forward for restoring trust and goodwill between China and the UK, which has diminished so much on both sides?
China has done nothing to weaken the trust, mutual trust between the two countries. As I said, we see UK as a partner, as a friendly countries. We want to advance this relationship, the golden era between our two countries. As I said on many occasions, we are about to celebrate this 50th anniversary. It's a time for celebration. But unfortunately, it's UK side which have done things to undermine the mutual trust by making unwarranted acquisition of this national security law to interrupt the implementation of this law, to interfere into Hong Kong's internal affairs. And so I think as I already said in my presentation, the way out for China-UK relations is the basic three principles: mutual respect, non-interference into each other's internal affairs, and treat each other as equals, as partners. And we do recognize we have differences, but we need to address these differences on equal basis. We should recognize the differences. China has no intention to change UK. And I think UK should have no intention to change China. We have been around for 70 years. And I think we have a common ground, common interest to unite our two countries rather than differences to divide us. We have China and UK as countries of global influence. We have enormous duties, responsibility, to live up to our responsibility to promote world peace and world prosperity. There's so many common agendas in front of us. With regard to the specific question you mentioned, since UK violated its commitment and pledge with regard to BNO, so we have to let them know that we have to take our measures not to recognize the BNO passport as a valid travel document. Thank you.
Our Chinese ambassador to the United Kingdom, Liu Xiangming, answering a question that was asked by CGTN Europe's correspondent Paul Barber. And in his response, he said that China has done nothing to weaken the relationship with the United Kingdom, and that China recognizes that the two countries do indeed have differences, but that there is an amicable way of working around that. And he also said that China has a responsibility, a huge responsibility, he said, to promote world peace. We'll keep checking in on that virtual press conference. Let's now take you to the United States, and the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has announced a mandatory mask policy for all House members and staff. Pelosi says wearing masks is a sign of respect for the health, safety and well-being of others. Members will be, however, allowed to take off their masks while addressing the chamber. The move came after a Republican congressman who refused to wear a mask tested positive for COVID-19. At least 3 House members have said they are considering self-quarantine because they were in contact with him. South Africa has over 470,000 cases of the coronavirus. The tourism industry is suffering tremendous losses from strict restrictions. Tuli Shabalala has more on that story.
This is Cape Town, and on a normal sunny day, hundreds of tourists would be lining up to take the cableway to the top of Table Mountain. Crowds would fill the beaches of Camps Bay and tour guides would be taking groups of people around the city. But since the outbreak of the coronavirus, tourist activities have completely stopped. For the past 5 months, South Africa has been under a strict lockdown to try curb the spread of the virus. And for those in the tourism industry, like Juma Mkwela, it's meant zero income.
Since March, with the pandemic, it came when I would say lots of tourism business also, like with my business, we were not like ready or not so much aware. And also, even if we were told that this is what's going to happen, we have to shut down, we thought maybe this thing was going to be just like for a couple of weeks, then it disappears, then we'll get back to normal.
Mkwela is the founder of Juma Art Tours. His trips connect local families and tourists to give visitors a unique experience of getting to know local neighborhoods. Many local businesses, backed by the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, have called on the government to open local tourism and allow domestic travel.
I don't see the reason of closing domestic tourism, because if the government could resume domestic tourism, it is going to give an advantage for people to start also understanding tourism, and also it's going to give an advantage for people in tourism to practice, like how are we going to take care of the international visitors when they come.
The Tourism Business Council of South Africa estimates a loss of $44 million a day.
And it accounts for about 113,000 jobs in Cape Town alone, and that includes both direct and indirect, because tourism is a value chain of services. And based on our study, it looks like there's about 90,000 jobs at risk with the continued lockdown.
The South African government has not yet provided any dates for when the lockdown will be lifted or further eased.
The only way we're going to get through this is for government and business and communities to work closer together in the recovery. And I think also this is a great opportunity for us to reset a lot of the imbalances we've got in society. And I think this is also an opportunity for us to rectify a lot of those wrongs. I think this is also an important time for us to be able to transform the industry and not just talk about it.
South Africa has prompted the International Monetary Fund to approve a $4.3 billion emergency loan to the country. The money will go towards addressing the challenging health situation and severe economic impact of the COVID-19. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
A new report by the UN Refugee Agency says that state officials were responsible for nearly half of all cases of physical violence against migrants trying to reach Libya. The findings seek to chronicle cases of violence and death that have been hard to track along the often deserted routes to Libya. The report raises calls for greater accountability.
Migrants have been crossing the Mediterranean Sea for decades. But since 2011, instability in Libya created a seemingly easier route for African migrants to enter Europe. But not everyone makes it to the other side.
Over the 2018-2019, we found out that about 1,700 people have died overland while trying to reach Libya. It's more or less the same number of people dying at sea for the same period, but we believe that number of people dying overland is underreported.
Those findings are based on nearly 16,000 interviews and data collected by the Council's Mixed Migration Center. But what is more shocking is learning about the people responsible for the incidents of physical violence on migrants.
We've learned report after report that they were abused along those roads, either committed by security forces, either committed by smugglers and traffickers. The West African routes leading to Libya, it's mainly the security forces, immigration official, border official involved in acts of sexual gender-based violence. Whereas if we look at other type of physical abuse along the routes, in the majority of the perpetrators are smugglers, traffickers, or criminal gangs associated with them.
The report lays out individual accounts of survivors of the violence experienced at the hands of officials. The UN is calling for extra efforts to boost protection for people on the move.
That's why there has to be proper accountability for those crimes. There have to be very accessible complaint mechanism and access to justice for victims of trafficking once they have reached safety. And that involves everybody. That includes countries of destination, countries of transit, and sometimes countries of origin when those people return home.
The International Organization for Migration has also denounced the current decision to send migrants back to Libya. It says returning people to a country that is not safe is not a viable solution. Chomgono, CGTN.
With South Africa's lockdown now in its 5th month, catfish from Groenvlei are helping to feed around 250 people per day in a community in the Western Cape. And as Tuli Shabalala reports, the carp were actually considered a threat to the Groenvlei Lake ecosystem.
It's just before sunrise, and volunteers are hauling nets in Groenvlei Lake. They are catching a fish species known as carp. The fish was introduced into Groenvlei in the 1800s. The carp reproduced so rapidly that the lake's ecosystem is under threat.
We have a program where we eradicate a common carp for the benefit of biodiversity here in the Vlei, in Groenvlei. And the second facet of the project is that the carp that we take out currently from the Vlei, we donate it to our local communities as part of food diet, because fish is actually an important source of protein.
Today the fish are destined for dinner tables in nearby Sledgefield, a town that depends hugely on tourism. And that industry has vanished almost overnight because of the coronavirus pandemic.
The fish is a relief. It's difficult during the lockdown for the children to get food, and money is scarce. So what can we do? But we are thankful for the fish. It's better.
The carp is now part of the community's food diet and an important source of protein.
Now, we did a lot of study and homework before we actually got to the point of where we are today. The fish itself, yes, needless to say, it's all good, very good for human consumption. The locals actually love it.
South Africa has the highest numbers of coronavirus infections on the continent. The country's coronavirus lockdown has caused millions of households to become food insecure. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
To Mali now, where tensions remain high as the opposition continues to call for the resignation of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. But an influential cleric considered the figurehead of the opposition coalition says the crisis could be resolved without the president stepping down. Chaumgono reports.
The latest call by opposition figurehead Mahmoud Dicko to have Mali's Prime Minister Boubou Cissé step down instead of the president. It's seen as part of renewed efforts to reach a compromise between the June 5 movement and the government.
We have said, and I've said it in particular, and I've also taken responsibility for what I've said, that I believe that we can find a solution without going as far as the resignation of the president. Aside from his resignation, there are lots of things that can be done.
Prime Minister Boubou Cissé has been trying to negotiate with the opposition to create a joint government.
I take this opportunity to launch an appeal, a sincere appeal to our sisters and to our brothers from the M5 RFP and other groups. I would like to say here, and every member joins me in this, I want to say that they are awaited and even strongly desired in this forthcoming government team, which we must put in place soon. I hope that this offer of dialogue that the President of the Republic has already put forward several times is not only heard but also accepted in order to allow us to get out of the crisis situation in which we find ourselves and to get on with what is essential for our country and for our people.
But the opposition says it wants nothing to do with these proposals. Instead, it's called for a second phase of civil disobedience, initiated 3 days after the Muslim festival of Eid al-Adha. Mali has been gripped by protests and uncertainty, despite several high-profile efforts to mediate its political impasse. Chom Hono, CGTN.
Coming up in business, Siemens is all set to upgrade Nigeria's dilapidated power infrastructure. And we'll bring you the highlights from this year's Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank annual meeting.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank discussed a variety of issues during its two-day online meeting that ended Wednesday, including how the coronavirus pandemic can be used to reassess regional connectivity. Our reporter Wei Lin Tang has the story.
One of the key topics discussed at the AIIB's 2020 annual meeting was how countries and businesses should adapt in a post-COVID-19 era. Members of the multilateral bank highlighted the need to close the digital divide between countries and to bring in more private investments, as the debt level of some countries is expected to rise as a result of increased fiscal expenditure.
Disruptions to trade, you see that even this crisis has in some ways and in some areas increased tendency toward protectionism. That is another form of disrupting connectivity. Those tendencies may have been there before, but especially in the areas of medical supplies, we have seen a tendency toward protectionism, and we really hope that that will subside and recede to be able to address the crisis when, for example, vaccines need to be shipped around the world.
Dubai-based logistics company DP World is one of the world's largest port operators. Its deputy chief financial officer says the pandemic helped them understand that supply chains should be more adaptable and robust.
What our clients are telling us is that there is definitely a need for greater flexibility and elasticity in the supply chain, right? So where we've had corporates in countries that have been huge suppliers for purely a domestic demand, overnight realized that with consumption down, they had to find new markets. And so very quickly pushed us to adapt and change, and their exports went up by 400, 500% in some cases. You know, you're definitely going to see regionalization, manufacturing move away from a central location, possibly to countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Mexico, India. You're definitely going to see that, and you're definitely going to see a greater emphasis on digitalization and technology.
Infrastructure spending is often seen as a counter-cyclical stimulus to boost the economy. In this regard, I asked the AIIB, how resilient is Asia's infrastructure sector, given reports of project delays caused by funding difficulties and supply chain disruptions? They say trust is key.
Infrastructure typically involves governments at different levels. When we talk about regional connectivity, we talk about coordinating the investments of different governments in different countries. So you need to have a framework where those who invest on one side of a border trust that there will be investments on the other side of the border and the road continues. And where this trust is not in place, multilateral partners like multilateral development banks can sometimes be the honest brokers that help facilitate those investments.
As countries emerge from a COVID-19 survival phase to a recovery phase, AIIB members say attention should be paid to a new form of connectivity infrastructure, one that is resilient and sustainable and satisfies the needs that are in line with commitments made to address climate change. Wei Lin Tang, CGTN, Beijing.
Let's get some reaction now from Nigeria on some of President Xi Jinping's key points at that Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank meeting.
It was quite interesting listening to President Xi Jinping of China in his address to the summit, annual summit of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank in Beijing, especially discussing multilateralism, pluralism in the recovery of world economy after the pandemic onslaught, or even still in the pandemic onslaught, because the world can't recover unless we come together. It is not what an individual nation can do and get out of it. Yes, the existence of AIIB is a clear demonstration of the belief in multilateralism. Don't forget that the bank came to life in January 2016 by the government of China in Beijing with about 50 state members or state parties. Today it has 102 state parties. That is the inclusiveness and multilateralism that China preaches and believes in. And I believe that's the reason China recovered first after the pandemic in the second quarter of 2020. I see AIIB moving at this pace, including and involving so many other countries, as a step in the right direction. And it's a demonstration that, for real, China doesn't just discuss globalization, inclusiveness and multilateralism, but acts it in its management of the world economy.
Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has given Siemens AG the go-ahead to upgrade the country's dilapidated power infrastructure. A counterpart funding deal will see the German engineering company expand Nigeria's electricity grid. Africa's most populous nation desperately needs the upgrade. Only about 2/3 of residents have access to power, and even those are plagued by constant blackouts. The government is expected to cover 15% of the project's total cost. That comes up to a little over $21 million. The rest will be provided by Yola James Group SAS and backed by the German government. Upgrading Nigeria's national grid is expected to be complete by 2025 with an on-grid transmission capacity of 25,000 megawatts. Still in Nigeria, car dealers are going through a tough time as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Sales have taken a big hit, and the situation has now been further worsened by the devaluation of the local currency. Here's Deji Badmas with more on that story.
Before the outbreak of COVID-19, Ikechukwu Woha's car dealership was a relatively thriving enterprise. He says he used to sell at least 3 cars in a week. But since late March, when the government imposed a lockdown on the country to check the spread of COVID-19, things have been drab for him and many others in his line of business. He says selling just a single car now is quite tough.
Business is not flowing, the economy is not moving. So we car dealers are not finding it funny. How many people has money to come and buy a car? So the money is no longer there as it used to be. So it's really affecting our business, actually.
Even though the government has since eased on the lockdown and allowed businesses to resume, in Lagos, the opening hours for car dealerships and other businesses have been cut short as a strategy by the government of the city to reduce social interactions to keep the spread of the virus in check. By the new rule, car dealerships are only allowed to open between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. 3 times a week. Iwoha says while the reduction in the hours of operations is affecting their business, it's the state of the economy that is the problem.
I know that the economy is not moving well. So you have affected the economy. So even if we are selling every day, from normal thing by 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock, I don't think it can improve a little bit, but it will not be the way, the way it's supposed to be. The way we have been selling before, let's say 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Nigeria's economy was actually struggling before COVID-19 struck, compounding an already tenuous situation for the country. Foreign trade dropped by 18% in the first quarter of the year, with total imports decreasing by over 20%. The result of the second quarter will certainly be worse because of the pandemic. Added to that is the devaluation of the local currency, which has driven up the price of imports like cars.
Like now, exchange rate is of nearly 400 and something per dollar. Before this COVID, we are talking about 300 and something, 360 per dollar. And the dollar is 460. If you use a 460 to 480 to buy a car, the price always go up. So somebody who doesn't have money to buy a car when the dollar was 360, what do you think for now? The car have gone up, clearing have gone up, so everything have gone up. So it's not easy.
What we've seen in the past couple of months as a result of COVID-19 is as family incomes decline, as inflation erodes the value of the purchasing power of their income, more and more people are focusing on basic needs. And therefore, the demand for cars has actually come down.
For now, the dealers say they are only managing to get by. And for someone like Iwoha, he's resigned to the fact that if the state of the economy does not improve, it will be difficult to get buyers for his cars. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, in the U.S., macro-weddings are a fresh trend in the bridal industry for couples whose nuptials were put on hold by COVID-19. CGTN's Daniela Pearson has more.
Rather than wait, Ashley Shaw and Austin Butterfield are getting married. Their big wedding plans had to be scrapped due to the coronavirus pandemic. The couple has now opted to tie the knot in a tiny wedding at a farm.
It was perfect. Honestly, even though we were planning a really big wedding, this turned out to be absolutely everything that I wanted and more. So I couldn't be happier.
The average cost of weddings pre-pandemic was just under $34,000. But with the tiny wedding package offered by Zingerman's Cornman Farms, cost just $2,000.
We found out about the tiny weddings actually through a Google search. In a panic of our December wedding has been canceled, what do we do? So thankfully we were able to actually get a slot because they were filling up so quickly.
Complete with farm goats, the tiny wedding experience lasts an hour and a half. Couples get a venue rental, flowers, a photo shoot, a ceremony, an officiant, a wedding cake, and champagne. They're permitted to invite no more than 8 guests.
I guess just to any other bride that's had their 2020 wedding canceled, I know it's hard, I know it's heartbreaking, but try and be creative. There are so many options for you. You can have everything you dreamed of in 2020, I promise.
Before the pandemic, 20 to 30,000 weddings took place every weekend in the US, according to data from wedding planning site TheKnot.com. Couples whose weddings have been impacted by the virus are rescheduling, with only 7% cancelling altogether. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
This is Africa Live. We'll be right back after the break.